Brilliant. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll just keep an eye out on the kind of lobby and people coming into the session today, but we'll get started. And really excited to be here with you all to look at resilience today. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I think it plays a part in everybody's life. And I've put up an image on the screen there of myself just after I'd finished the Inca Trail, so it was a few years ago now, but 4 days, and for me it encapsulates my resilience, because there was a journey of lots of ups, lots of downs, there was altitude sickness, there was lots of laughs, but for me in terms of resilience, it's about how do we learn from all of our experiences that we've had in our life, how do we take our whole self forward with us, and how do we have different coping strategies, tools, mechanisms that we can use when we are experiencing challenging times. And I'm sure, for everyone over the last year or so, that your resilience has been tested in a number of different ways. So for those of you that I don't know, my name's Karen Bonner. I work with lots of different individuals and teams and leaders to think about how they show up, how you interact, how you work best together. Well-being's a huge part of my role as well, and how I coach and facilitate with different teams and organisations. So really excited to talk a little bit more about that as we go through the session. So Sarah mentioned there that we are recording the session as well. So again, camera on or off is completely up to you during this session. I don't know about you, but I'm spending so much time on screen that sometimes the odd time to not have my camera on can be quite nice at times, not focusing on, oh, where do I have to look and where do I have to look interested in as well. So completely up to you what you fancy today. Obviously, I'm sure a number of you have used Zoom before, but I think sometimes at the beginning of these sessions, it can be good to just set out a few different parameters just so that we can use the tool in the best possible way. So you'll see that you've got an option for the chat box. It should be shown on your main kind of toolbar there for Zoom, or you might have to press more and then it'll give you a chat option. If you've got any questions as we go through the session today, please do feel free to pop them in the chat box. And if there are any specific questions for me, just put a little Q at the beginning and my eye will be drawn to that as well. But do use the chat box as well for any informal comments that you've got amongst each other and anything you want to share, because I always say I don't have all the answers. I wish I did, but I don't have all the answers. I don't have a magic wand, but what I do provide for you today is tried and tested tools that have worked for me and worked for other people as well in resilience. Also, we've got a good number of people in the session today, but I also want to give you the chance, if you want to jump on the mic and ask me anything or share anything, comment anything, that you've got the opportunity to do that. So you should have a function to raise your hand, and it will be in one of two places on Zoom. Zoom always likes to keep us on our toes by changing things up. So it will either be in the participants list, so at the very bottom of participants, you should see an option to raise your hand or select more, and it should give you an option to raise your hand. Or if you've got a tab which is for reactions, and that's got little emojis and different things in it there, little bits that you can give me feedback on, there should also be an option in there to raise your hand, depending on the device that you're in as well. So what we're going to do just now is just to make sure everybody's on mute, just to avoid any feedback. But as I said, if you want to jump on the mic, really encourage that through the session today as well. So we'll just do that to begin with as well. So that's the boring stuff about Zoom. I like to get that out of the way first before we move into the good stuff. So I always think with anything, it's really good for us to be aware of what the kind of purpose is in anything that we're doing too. So for me, I would hope for you to leave with a kind of greater understanding of resilience and maybe a different view on it as well. I would love to provide you with some ideas and tools that you can implement that are free, that are accessible and easy for you to use. I want to answer any questions that you've got. So sometimes people feel comfortable sharing the questions with the whole group. That's brilliant. So I'll keep an eye on the chat or on the mic for that. If there's anything you want to ask me directly, you can either send me that kind of private message on Zoom, or you can get in touch with me via my website, and I always get back to people around any questions or things you maybe want a bit more information on, and that's justmyname.com, so KarenBonner.com. And the last thing in terms of that kind of purpose is, I always say, if you're setting aside time to do a session like this, you want it to have a positive impact. You want to take something from it. But I'm very much against you taking 50 actions from a session like today. I want you to think about, what's the one thing that you want to take away? What's the one thing that you could do differently? I'm sure you've all got very busy to-do lists. So let's just think about what's the one key thing here. Okay, so I'm interested if you can start just typing in the chat box. Just let me know, which topic are you most interested today? So these are the kind of 4 key topics that we're going to have a look at. So what is resilience? How does mindset impact your resilience? House of 4 Rooms tool, which is a great tool in resilience and overall well-being, and Circle of Control, which you may have heard about in terms of how you can control and influence different elements of your life in general. And I think, again, in a lot of ways, having elements of control can help us as well. Okay, you can see a few different comments coming through there. So a few people for House of 4 Rooms, mindset and balance here, of all the different topics coming through. So I just like to get a sense before we start, and then there is a bit of flex, obviously, in how we do things, so to just be able to spend enough time in the different areas. So I can see a few more people joining in there too. Yeah, so House of 4 Rooms might be new to you. It was something that I learned just a number of years ago. I read a blog article about it and I was like, oh, it's so good. So I always like to share it with people where possible as well. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing in the chat box. And again, keep any comments, feedback, questions coming. It makes the session more interesting for everyone as well. So as we go through the session, we've talked about kind of circle of control there a little bit in terms of what can we control. But I want us to think about right now, how can we be in more of a space of responding rather than reacting? So we're in reactive mode, often when we're in the kind of fight or flight stress response. And sometimes we need to trick our body and trick our mind out of fight or flight. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can move out of being more reactive when we feel like we don't have any control of things and it's all just happening instinctively, to bring in a bit more calm so that we can be more responsive in what we say, what we do, how we show up as well, and also how we feel too. So how we can kind of own some of our actions as well. So keep that in mind as we're going through the session today. So really interested, and I think it's an interesting question here that I've put up on the screen, but I'm going to do a little poll in a moment. But interested to get a sense of how you're feeling today. So often we're just in that mode of, right, I just have to get on with things. I've got so many things going on that we don't always take stock to do a bit of a temperature check in terms of how we're feeling. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate how you're feeling? So I'll just pop up this poll just now. And what I should say, in any of the polls that we're doing during the session today, nobody can see how you're answering. I can't even see, I can just see numbers at this end. And I'll share with you the overall pattern here. So 1 being the lowest we could feel and 10 being the highest as well. So just interested, this is always the fun bit for me, is when you can see all the different votes coming through on the poll as well. So I can see a few more people just joining in. So welcome to the session if you're joining in here. And we're just doing a little poll about how people are feeling today as well. So just a bit of a check-in. So let me just share what we've got on the screen. So hopefully you should be able to see on the screen here. So we've got everything ranging from people being 3 out of 10 right through to 9 out of 10. So you can see how in a virtual room like this, in a team that you might be working in your home environment, we can all be experiencing the day in a very different way. And probably if I ask you this question morning and evening, you might have a different response as well. But why I use the scale of 1 to 10 in a lot of the questions that I ask myself is because it's a temperature check. So if I'm below a 5 out of 10 in terms of how I'm feeling, I always try and think about things that might shift me to a higher number there, things that are within my control that I can do. So I often say moving your body, so getting up rather than being hunched over the desk. You know, and again, when we are that kind of hunched over, our shoulders tend to go up towards our ears, and I always say drop your shoulders to again try and bring in a bit more relaxation, or do what I call the kind of chicken wings here. So bringing a bit of movement to your body as well. Loosening the jaw, we can often hold a lot of tension in our jaw, and letting the tongue drop to the bottom of our mouth, letting our mouth overall relax as well. These kind of things seem really simple, but sometimes can help our body to feel a bit more relaxed. I do a lot of mindfulness and meditation. I'm a meditation teacher as well as a lot of other things. So just focusing on your breath as well, bringing in a bit more ease with your breath, slowing it down. Often when we're under pressure, we're breathing up here, and the breathing is quick. We want to imagine that we're breathing down into our stomach. And an easy one to do is breathing in for 4. So imagine the breath going right down and inflating your stomach, pausing for 4, and then exhaling everything out of your mouth for more than 4. So that's a really simple breath that can help you to, again, be in more of the relaxation response, which can bring us to be able to respond in all elements of our life as well. So I'm going to stop sharing this now in terms of the poll that we're looking at. But just keep in mind again what your number was at, and how do you feel after doing certain things throughout your day to day, and just notice you know, how that might either go up or down. What are the things that are helping us, and also sometimes what are the things that are hindering us as well. So I'd love you to type in the chat box right now, what is your interpretation of resilience? So maybe share a couple of words or a sentence in terms of what your perspective is around resilience, what it means to you. And I'll keep an eye on the chat box just to see what people are saying here. Yeah, so that bounce back, Wendy, brilliant. That strength to cope, love it, Louise. Okay, how we cope with challenges, a couple of people saying that there. Brilliant. Weather the storm, great analogy. I'm sure a lot of us are thinking about at the moment as well. So again, kind of common themes here. I love that bend, not break, in terms of resilience. Now, I always think when we're looking at any, keep your responses coming as well, I'll check back in there, but I think when we're looking at anything, I like to often go back to the origin. So the origin of a word, what does it mean? Because sometimes that can help us as well resonate with it a little bit more and bring our own take too. So very simple dictionary definitions around resilience are that ability to recover quickly from tough times, to spring back, that elasticity, and it derives from the Latin resilient around leaping back. And I think that's really interesting because I like to bring a slightly different angle to it as well. So for me, it's not only about how we respond, but it's often about accepting a tough situation. That doesn't mean that we want it, that we like it, that we've got any tolerance for it in the moment, but accepting that something is happening. I think that's a huge part and a huge first step for a lot of people in terms of resilience. Responding to current circumstances or challenges with a forward-looking approach as well. So the interesting thing about the traditional, I guess, definitions of resilience are about bouncing back. And I think it's about actually moving forward. So how do we use our experiences? How do we use the different coping mechanisms that we have to enable us to face these tough kind of situations, and also to use all of our experiences to equip us more for the future as well. So I like to think about it as kind of quite future orientated too, in terms of resilience as well. I love some of these quotes coming through as well. Do keep them coming as well. Tough people last, tough times don't. And something that always sticks in my mind is that this too will pass. So everything that we've been experiencing in terms of restrictions and all the challenges around health and COVID and not being able to see people, this too will pass. Things will look different perhaps for all of us and in different ways, but we are going to be able to use some of the experiences, some of the lessons that we've learned. And one thing that I'm thinking about is, what are some of the things from this last year that I want to keep? And what do I want to get rid of? Okay, so think about that as well for yourself too. So brilliant engagement there in the chat box. I love this little dude here. So why I put this image up is because it really reminds me that there's a lot that we can do to build our resilience. And a bit like, if we want to get fit physically, we will exercise. If we want to get fit mentally, again, we need to exercise. We need to put in that work, just like we would do if we wanted to build muscle as well. Because again, that brain, imagine that resilience muscle that we're trying to build as we go through this session today as well. So I wanted to share a little bit about my own kind of experience as well. For me, in resilience, or when things are tough, action is really important, and that doesn't need to be knowing what the solution all looks like. It's about doing something. It's about taking a positive next step, and sometimes that can be getting out of your head with things. Okay, so going out and going for a walk to kind of bring more clarity of thought. For me, I like to write things down. So if I'm worrying about something, I like to ask myself positive questions and write things down to get it. So what's my next move? How could I impact this situation positively? Is what I'm worrying about true? Validate it. Will it matter in a week? Will it matter in a month? Will it matter in a year? Sometimes asking your mind these questions can really help take you in a different perspective. You might notice on my wrist here, I've got a hair bobbler, an elastic band. I wear this because it helps me be really aware of how I'm talking to myself and my thoughts. So if I start to get in a negative spiral, I'll ping that elastic band, I'll ping that hair bobble. And what I'll do is I will then begin to notice, what was my thought pattern looking like? How can I influence this situation? I'll ask myself these questions. And your mind, your brain likes questions. So just look at a classroom full of children and you ask a question, you see the hand going up, you see the chat box, everybody wants to kind of answer the question. We are the same. So if you ask yourself different questions, if you talk to yourself differently, you'll get a different response. And I remember watching a video once, and the video was about a lady who was on a date. So she thought she was getting on great with her dates, and you're chatting away and all that sort of stuff, and lots of things in common, she thought. And the guy said, I'm just going to go to the toilet, I'll be back shortly. And he never appeared back. So the woman rightly was disappointed and just feeling a bit rubbish. So she thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to phone my friend. She'll give me a bit of advice. And her friend said, that I just see a few comments coming through in the chat box here. Apologies, some people are having a few issues with Zoom, so if you do get kicked out again, if there's issues with the internet, then we will keep an eye out for you coming back and we'll let you back in, so that's no worries. But yeah, I was talking about there, she called her friend in this situation, and our friend said, well, I'm not surprised because you're quite boring to be around, you're quite ugly and you never have much luck on dates. And the video stopped and it said that wasn't her friend, that was how she was talking to herself. Would we talk to our friends in the same way in which we talk to ourselves? We're often our own biggest critic. We could often be beating ourselves up internally as well. So just being aware of that, and this really helps me visually be aware of it too. I mentioned reminding yourself of the big picture here as well. And I always think with resilience, with well-being, with our approach to life in general, that we've always got the opportunity to learn from experiences. We've always got the opportunity to try something different. And I'm sure on this session today, there will be people with far more experience, either medically or with people, than I've got personally. But what I want to kind of put into the room today is just a few ideas, a few bits of my own experience that you might be able to just pick little things from. I always imagine myself kind of throwing out lots of ideas, and I'm hoping that you'll catch one or two of the things as we go through the session today. So I'm really interested, and especially think about this in the context of the last year, what has really helped you to build your resilience? What's been really important for you? And again, type in the chat box and let's share a few ideas here. Your dog, Debbie, love it. So important, that connection. Brilliant, thank you for sharing. Yeah, breathing techniques, cold showers, Louise, absolutely. I do a little cold end to my shower, and yeah, it's a refresher, especially in this weather, but so good for you as well. Getting outside, self-awareness, yeah. Love that, listening to meditation. You're all absolutely experts here. Yeah, Calm app as well, walking in the hills. Yeah, having little things to look forward to, all of this is amazing stuff. And again, just kind of keeping your focus on this as well, but share things that you're doing as we go through the session today, because again, sometimes there'll be so I was doing a session last week and somebody was talking about a specific workout that we're doing, and I was saying, oh, I quite like a bit of a boogie, you know, when we're allowed to be out and about on a night out and things like that. And somebody was saying, oh, I do this dance workout that's brilliant, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try that. So again, pick up different things from each other as well, and give things a try. Be open-minded too. So one thing that's really helped for me in terms of my experience and building my resilience is becoming really aware of my mindset. So the mind, the brain, so complex. But what I've begun to understand is that there's elements of it that I absolutely can control. And a big thing for me has been this concept of growth and fixed mindset. So if you're in more of a fixed mindset, you perhaps think, this is just me, I can't change, or I'm not good enough. There's always a challenge in the way, there's always an obstacle, something that you know, is keeping you rooted where you are as well. You stick with what you know as well. Stick in that comfort zone rather than sometimes stretching out with the comfort zone. Focus on all the things externally that are wrong. Moan about everybody else and everything else. And I would say all of us probably at times have seen ourselves in that fixed mindset of complaining about lots of things that perhaps we can't control in the world, that things that feel unfair. And sometimes we need that vent and we need to have that outlet. But what I want us to think about is that growth mindset. I think what's really interesting with more of a growth mindset is that we're looking for the opportunities, that we're looking for what we can do rather than what we can't do. We're looking at putting in place little steps and building blocks to help us think about how we do things differently, how we grow. And again, the whole word growth as well too. And I like that little imagery of the little plant growing there, that seedling growing, and then the padlock of sometimes being fixed, you know, we're set in where we are as well. For me, that growth mindset is all about continuous learning. It's about development. It's sometimes about holding up the mirror and seeing things that we like, but a lot of the time things that perhaps we don't like so much in ourselves, and think about how we, I guess, bring some of that more less conscious behaviour into our conscious approach as well too. I'm really interested to see on the session today where you would see yourself in more of that growth or fixed mindset at the moment. And again, this can change in any given time. So I'm going to just pop up a little poll here and just get you to cast your vote there. Would you see yourself in more of that fixed mindset, sometimes holding yourself back, rooted to where you are right now, versus that growth mindset, which is all around kind of opportunities and what we can do, and I'm not good enough yet, I've not quite made it yet, you know, that yet is really important as well to focusing on what we are good at as well. I can see a few people are dropping in and out and coming into the session, so welcome to anybody who's just joining. Hopefully there's not too many technical issues going on in the background as well. We do have Sarah Young who's on the session as well from the chamber, so she will be able to, if there's anything that you need to ask her technically about Zoom, we'll be able to support there, or just ask in the chat box too. So I'm going to give you another moment and then I'm going to share what we've got in terms of the results here. Okay, what we can see is growth mindset is just edging it there, but a real balance on the session today. And I think thank you to everyone for your openness and honesty. There's no right or wrong, but for me, I always think if I'm in more of a growth mindset, I tend to feel more energetic, I tend to feel more positive, I tend to be more productive in my approach as well. So we're going to have a little look at how we can shift our perspective a little bit in terms of the mindset side of things as well. So I've talked about a few of these things already in terms of resilience as a whole and well-being and as a whole. For me, what you focus on, you tend to see more of. So if you've ever bought a new car, what do you tend to see on the road? You tend to see that make and model on the road all the time. Is it that everybody's just suddenly bought that same car? Or if it's another product, that same product? No, it's not. What's happened? We've become really aware of that specific make and model of car. So that's where our lens of focus is. It's the same at the moment. If we focus on everything that's not working, everything that's frustrating, everything that's rubbish, everything that's out with our control, that tends to be all that we see. And the same if we focus on some of the things that we're grateful for, some of the things that are really good that are going on in our life right now, some of the flexibility that perhaps working from home might bring us, if you are working from home. I really try and encourage people to think about the good things that are happening in your life. Simple way of doing that is actually answering that question. What has been good about today? What's been good about this morning so far? What have some of the positive things been? What are you grateful for? Gratitude is something that's got, I believe, is a bit of a superpower. So the more that you focus on what you're grateful for and what you have, rather than what you lack, it can really shift your perspective and your focus as well. Interested to hear if anybody kind of journals, practice gratitude, anything like that. It can be a really good exercise to do if you've got children as well. Have a little jar and pop little things in the jar that you're grateful for, or exciting things or good memories as well. Can be a really good way to maybe end your day or start your day as well. I've talked about the power of questions when I was talking about my own experience. So asking yourself a few positive questions. What could I do in this situation? Who could support me as well? It's really important in terms of our resilience that we tap into our support network around us as well. Also in terms of the kind of power of questions, I like to have a few little questions kind of written down around me as well. So finding your own questions. What's my next step? Is it true what I'm worried about here? What can I do about it? What's the next step? Because often what happens is we get caught in our head and we end up going down this kind of spiral, or we procrastinate about looking for a solution because it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with it, I'm going to just push it to the side. That's often the worst thing we can do, because it creates energy in terms of that feeling a bit anxious about what are we going to do, how are we going to solve it as well. In anything you do, I think if you're clear on your intention, so intention has got a couple of different meanings for me. What is the purpose in what you're doing? So if you're going in a meeting, what do you want to get from the meeting? What do you want the other person to get from the meeting? But also intention for me means at the beginning of the day, thinking about how do you want to show up? How do you want to be? How do you want to feel as well? And even if you don't feel these things right now, writing down how you want to feel in the present tense can be a great way of sending that message to your brain. So at the beginning of the day, I'll write down what feeling do I want to encompass? So it's usually I am energetic, or I am calm, if I'm doing some of my meditation and mindfulness sessions, or I am positive, or if I'm talking about a specific subject, I am knowledgeable, whatever that might be. So often we start our day with our to-do list. I've got to do all these things. How do you want to be? How could you create a to-be list? and how might that help you in your day-to-day as well. Habits create your hour, they create your day, they create your week, they create your month, year, you get the picture, they create your life. So being more aware of our habits can really help us see what is helping us and what's hindering us, what is really helping us in terms of how we feel overall as well. Brilliant book. If you haven't read it, Atomic Habits by James Clear. There's also The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg as well. Both of those books, brilliant. Atomic Habits, probably my favourite one there. Just distills down habits into tiny little chunks, helps you to understand. And I love some of the theories within it, or some of the messages within it around starting small. So often with everything, we set ourselves huge challenges. Big challenges are good, but we need to also distill them down into smaller habits. How are we going to get there? What are some of the systems we need to put in place? And simple habits for me that really help. I've mentioned them already and I'll mention them again. Kind of meditation, being mindful in my approach. Exercise, really important for bringing clarity of thought and strength to my body as well. Journaling is something that I really enjoy doing as well. Surrounding myself with positive people too. Reading is one thing that I couldn't be without. It's a real kind of keystone or cornerstone habit in my life as well too. You'll see there's a bucket up there. And so many of us would like to be at the seaside at the moment. But why do I put that bucket up there? It's about another book, which is called How Full Is Your Bucket? And why I love it is because it gives us a really nice analogy to think about how we impact other people. And that, for me, is a really important part of resilience, our relationships. So it talks about there'll be certain people in your day-to-day life who you'll get on with, who you'll connect with, who are quite positive. You might have a great laugh with them. When you're working with them, time just seems to fly in. These would be our bucket fillers. So the people that top us up, make us feel energised. We leave the interaction feeling like, oh, that was great, feeling more energetic. But there's other people who will drain the life from us. And it might be people in your work, it might be people in your personal life. These are our bucket dippers, so the people who are perhaps taken from us, taking water from that bucket there. We don't connect with that person in a given interaction that we're having, might be a bit negative, just doesn't click or connect. Now the interesting thing is this is totally dynamic. None of us on this session today are just bucket fillers or are just bucket dippers. It can be dynamic with who you're talking to, who you're working with, who you're living with as well, how you interact. So I always use my own personal example of me and my partner Dave. So we're doing a renovation project at the moment and lots of pressures with that going on in terms of getting things finished and budgets and different things going on, getting different materials, all that sort of stuff. And Dave's doing most of the work. So I am really trying to keep his bucket filled, full in terms of supporting him, being kind to him, going easy on him at times when he's a bit grumpy with it all. So I would try to be that bucket filler whenever I can. But there's also times where perhaps he hasn't put his washing in the wash basket and he's put it at the side of the wash basket or on top of it. Or perhaps he has left all the dishes in the sink instead of popping them into the dishwasher. I'm sure some of us could associate with some of this. If I moan at him there, does he think, oh, Karen's been a bucket filler? Does he what? I'm in that mode of bucket dipping at that point in time. Think about how you impact others, but think about for yourself, how are you topping up your bucket, or how are you dipping from your own bucket at times as well? I love it as an analogy, and it's used in schools often with children to think about their behaviours and interactions as well. So if it's not something that you've heard of, do have a little look into it a bit more as well. So we've been talking a lot about mindset so far and how we can shift perspective as well. I want to share a few other things with you through the session too. I'll just come back into the chat box and see what we've got. As well, loving this, loving the comments. Cuddles absolutely are good. I think we're all missing cuddles. Okay, So a number of you at the very beginning of the session said you were interested to hear a bit more about A House of Four Rooms. So there's a book called A House of Four Rooms, a lady called Rumer Gordon talking about her life in this concept of a house of four rooms. Where it all comes from is an Indian proverb, and the Indian proverb talks about us, each individual person being a house of four rooms. And just imagine that to be in balance, to be in your best possible place, you need to step into each of these four rooms at least once a day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, to air the room, to be in balance individually. And it's interesting because what you'll tend to see when I talk through a little bit about the House of Four Rooms is you might gravitate towards one or two of these rooms more strongly. So I'm going to talk you through what each of these mean. Now, you didn't sign up for an art class today, and you'll see even by my imagery on my slides that I am no artist myself. But what I recommend, if you've got a pen, paper, or sometimes people are kind of using their iPads and things to draw, then grab it just now, because when I talk through each of the rooms within your own house, sometimes it can be really good to capture the elements that you're most interested in here, that resonate most with you, and be as creative as possible. If you've got coloured pens and things in the background, you go for it. Okay, so let me just go through each of the rooms to begin with. The mental room, where all of our thoughts reside, where all of our beliefs are as well. Sometimes in that mental room we can get caught in our head in terms of sometimes negatively speaking to ourselves, that inner dialogue and self-talk in that mental room there. In a positive way, the mental room, we can step in there to learn, to read, to try something new, to challenge ourselves. To maybe do something in our job role that stretches us in that mental room. What about the emotional room? So the emotional room is how we feel, okay? And at times, what I'm observing in myself and others, people that I'm working with, there's this, what people are talking about, this up and down, feeling a bit more extreme possibly at the moment. When you are feeling nervous about something, when you're feeling a bit worried about something, where in your body do you feel that? Type in the chat box and let me know. Chest, stomach, common themes here. Yawn. Hopefully we're not making you yawn here today, Brian. Yeah, tension in your back. You can see that we feel it all in our body, okay? Our body is always giving us clues, and so often what we do is we don't listen to them until our body says, you're going to listen to me. You're going to be ill for a little while because you need to rest. And I always think prevention is better than cure. So how can we look after ourselves? But in terms of the most, I guess, connectors to our emotions within our bodies, these sit in our stomach, the abdomen kind of area, and our chest area, so our kind of heart centre area as well. And that's why I'm so passionate about bringing meditation and mindfulness to people, because it's all about the breath. The breath is free. The breath is the difference for us between life and death. So often people aren't even aware of how you're breathing as well. So your breath can really help to regulate your emotions as well. So let's look at that too. But imagine emotionally how you feel. Imagine emotionally in a positive way. You can be really compassionate to yourself and to other people. You can listen to others. That can be a really positive way to be in that emotional room as well. But sometimes when we're in that emotional space, we can be very reactive as well if it's more negative emotions. So just being aware of what we're saying. Is it necessary? Is it kind as well? To checking ourselves in on that. The physical room, pretty self-explanatory. It's around movement. It's around exercise. It's around what we eat. It's around rest. But also it's about listening to your body. And you will notice, perhaps even by me just saying, you hold a bit of tension in your body, you might be noticing where do you hold that tension in your body. I often hold it up here, top of the back, shoulders, all the things we should be doing, often all the pressures we're putting on ourselves. I do really believe a kind of mind, body and soul connection exists here. So the spiritual room. So what does spiritual mean in this context? Spiritual can be your belief system. For some people it's religion. For others it's been mindful, it's been present, it's practicing meditation. It's how connected we are to the whole world, to nature, to other people as well. I also like to think of it as being in high spirits as well. What puts you in high spirits? What puts you in your best possible place? So I'm really interested to hear now, which of these rooms do you spend most of your time? So I'm going to pop up a little poll here and just let you cast your vote here again. Okay, I can see most of the votes coming through now, so I'm just going to end the poll and just share what we've got. So a lot of people in that mental room, then followed by the emotional room, and then physical and spiritual. So really interesting out of everybody here today, the majority by a good length there is in that mental room as well. So I'm interested now to see where would you like to spend a bit more of your time. So let me just pop that up, just so that we can see a little contrast here. Okay, I'll give it another second and then I'll share what we've got here. Okay, so let me share now what we've got. A lot of people saying they want to step into the physical room. So again, we'll have a look in a moment around that. Then the spiritual, followed by emotional and mental. So following a similar pattern, oppositely round obviously, into the last question as well. So reminding you of what I said right at the beginning, think about the one thing that you could do, the one thing that's most important from what we're talking about today. Of course, if you want to try more, brilliant, but don't add lots of different pressures onto yourself. Now, don't worry about reading this whole slide, it's quite busy here, but what I do have is different ideas to positively step into each of these rooms. So I'm going to start at the physical room because we talked about that being the room that perhaps we want to step into more of. So rest and sleep, they say on average 7 to 8 hours we should be getting. Do you create a bit of a routine before you go to bed, or do you go to bed, you've got the phone, you're on the screen, you put it down, you fall asleep, that sort of thing. And sometimes when we're listening to something when we fall asleep, some of you said that you kind of practice kind of meditation or different techniques as well, which is a brilliant way to do that kind of before sleeping as well. But do we put enough focus on the importance of sleep in terms of our kind of recovery time and our health overall as well? Simple things, you've talked about it already. Getting outside in nature really does help us physically. Exercise, so sometimes people love exercise, other people maybe don't like it as much. Finding something that you enjoy, I think, is really important. I like variety in what I do, so I like a mix of running, I like yoga, I like Zumba, I like doing different kind of home workouts as well, a bit of strength stuff too, but finding something that really works for you, trying something new as well too, but starting small. Don't start and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to run a marathon. Chunk it down. We talked about smaller habits can help. As well, a lot of people have probably been finding spending more time in the house, often going to that space of like comfort eating. So how can we be more aware of what we're eating and how what we're eating impacts our body as well? Moderation versus indulgence. I'm no dietitian, so I'm not going to labour that at all, and we all know the basics there. But something that can really help is changing your state and how you feel by moving your body. It connects to all of these rooms here too. So how can you just bring in a bit of movement? I sometimes just do 10 quick jumping jacks to energise myself. That only takes not even a minute, it probably takes about 20 seconds to do, and it can just really shift how you're feeling. You don't need an hour to be more in that physical room. Even to move into that space for 5 more minutes a day can make a big difference in between calls and things and moving. What about the spiritual room? That was the one that, again, was the second most popular to step more into there as well. So I'm just going to check our time. We've actually got a little bit of time where I could take you through a little activity for just a few minutes around mindfulness. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just close off your camera for this, just so that you're not self-conscious at all. And I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to just talk you through a little meditation and mindfulness practice that's all about using your hands, okay, and becoming aware of your breath. So I want you to just direct your attention to your breathing. If you want, you can gently close down your eyes and just assume a position that's a seated position that allows your spine to really be elongated and that you'll be able to sit in for a few minutes. So it could be cross-legged, it could be cross-legged on the floor, it could be that we're sitting just comfortably on our chair. And just begin to notice your breath. So in this meditation here, there's no right way to breathe. It's just feeling the sensations of the breath. So just let your breath be exactly as you find it. Notice where you feel it move through your body. So it could be to your tummy, to your sides, your back, in your chest, and even up into your collarbones. So just let the breath move through you and filling all the internal nooks and crannies on the inhalation, and just allowing a gentle, effortless exhalation. Now what I want you to do is to just draw your attention to the position that you've chosen for your hands. Notice how pleasant it feels for your hands to have to do nothing. Nothing to do here. So often our hands are busy typing, writing, doing manual work. And often we don't notice the tension in our hands. What I'd like you to do now with your hands is place your palms flat down on your thighs in a way that keeps your shoulders relaxed and allows you to soften the whole length of your arm. Get curious about the effect that this hand gesture has on your breathing. What you might notice here is that it makes your exhalation, your exhale, longer, deeper, or easier. Enjoy a few soothing breaths here with the palms facing downward. This can be quite a good technique to just use for grounding and stability, which I think at times we all could do with. And when you've taken a few breaths here and notice your breath, I now want you to turn your palms to face upwards and allow the fingertips to curl loosely towards your palm. And just notice how this hand gesture changes the sensation of your breathing. You might begin to feel that the inhalation seems a bit lighter, longer, or perhaps easier. And just take a few breaths here with your palms facing upward. And just allow yourself to feel your breath, to notice your breath, and to allow this energy that's coming into your body to invigorate you. And the final thing that we're going to do with our hands now is I want you to bring the thumb and your first finger of each hand to touch in what's called a mudra. And just observe how this hand position changes your breathing. It's what we would typically see when you see perhaps an image of somebody meditating in that kind of lotus position with the thumb and first finger. You may feel that this directs your breath more into your abdomen, and it really encourages more diaphragmatic breathing, which naturally is quite calming and centering. So just be here for a few breaths. And notice how it feels and how you feel. And if you're happy to be guided back out of this little meditation that we're doing here, just bring a bit of presence back into the room. So wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. You might want to do a big overhead stretch here. Bring your hands out to a T. And just let's go for one last deep inhale. Inhale through your nose, pausing, and then exhaling everything out through your mouth. So hopefully you enjoyed stepping into that spiritual room. Don't feel that you have to put the cameras back on or anything like that. Just give yourself a moment or two. And we'll talk a little bit around the other rooms as well, but just something as simple as a few different hand gestures, a few different hand mudras can really impact your breathing. And it's amazing then what else in our body can impact our breathing. Just start to become curious of that too. Interested if people do come back onto the chat and things, just to let me know how you found that there as well. Yeah, really interesting there, Wendy. We sometimes don't. We don't really realise how much we need to just stop and become aware as well. I just think it's such a gift, and I like talking to everybody about it. So in terms of the other rooms, a lot of you talked about being in the mental room, and interested to understand for you individually, was it the mental room in a positive way, or was it perhaps the mental room in a more negative way as well? Love that. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work for people. That's absolutely fine. You find what works for you too, but I think it's interesting too. We all find our own thing, so thank you for that honesty there as well. But in that mental room, I want you to think about what are some of the things that you could do to step more positively into it. So you can see I've got a bit about exercise. For me, that brings mental clarity. Reading, learning new things as well, helps me to feel more stretched and more in a really kind of peak performance type state. Setting a goal, loving a challenge as well can be really good, something to work towards. And again, how can you bring some of this into your work? Share some of this with some of your colleagues as well. And then finally, that emotional room. So if you want to step more positively into the emotional room, showing a bit of compassion for other people, showing kindness to yourself. Talked about listening, connecting with family whilst not always in person at the moment. How can you make sure that you keep in touch? Have more positive conversations sometimes, share funny things. We often have a few group chats going on with funny videos and different things that can keep us in a good mood as well too. But being really aware of your inner self-talk, and I always come back to this elastic band here. So hopefully there's something there in the House of Four Rooms that you think, I'm going to try that, or that's something that I needed to be reminded of. None of this is rocket science. A lot of this will not be new to you, but what I love about it is how it brings everything together in terms of my own kind of well-being, and thinking about how you build that resilience, how you build that strength to be able to cope with things as well. So for me, it's about how do you keep yourself in a more aware, a more responsive, more relaxed place, rather than being in a reactive stress response so much of the time that people find themselves in. Wanted to share with you something. So I've been working over the last few years in a number of different ways with a lady called Dr. Sandra Oza, and she's been part of a study at the university with a few other people. It's all about resilience and research. So she talks about these different elements in resilience. So I just wanted to share that this is a resource that is free, available to you, and we will share a link to it after the session. But I've been talking with Sandra, and Sarah had been as well, and I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned it. It's not something we're going to go into in a huge amount of depth right now, but that resource will absolutely be available for you after the session. So some of you may have seen Insights Discovery as a tool. It's a tool I like to use in some of the work I do with organisations. And this is some of the elements of their approach around resilience. And I think it's quite good to think about it in this way, because it gives us some tangible things to look at as well. So looking after yourself being so important, being involved with others through your relationships, taking action, and having strategies and plans as well, getting organised, having different approaches as well, having backup plans sometimes can help too. So again, we'll share this with you as we kind of follow up the session. So I want to just kind of leave you with a couple of things here. You'll see some of my top tips, and I've talked a lot about them already, so I'm not going to just read out this slide here. But for me, perspective is right up there. So focusing on things that are good, focusing on successes, focusing on things we're grateful for helps us in terms of our overall resilience. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean we like it, but being able to identify when circumstances are difficult and accept that they're happening and take ownership of doing something about it as well. Even if it's just sometimes saying, I need to relax here. I need a little bit more time to myself to actually get my head around this. That's a positive next step as well. Make relaxation a priority for you in your life. Make your self-care a priority there as well. To a brilliant book, if you haven't read it, Option B by Sheryl Sandberg. She talks about avoiding 3 Ps to help us in resilience. So personalisation, believing that we're all at fault or that it's our fault. Pervasiveness, that this event, this period of time is going to affect all areas of our life for the whole time. And also that permanence bit. Sometimes we think this is going to last forever. There's no light at the end of the tunnel as well. And I love the kind of quote about resilience coming deep inside us and also supporting us on the outside as well. We need support to be able to be resilient too. So I'm going to leave you. We've got 2 minutes just to think about this, but leave you with your circle of control. So if you've got a bit of paper, just draw a circle there and think about what one thing could you do that might make yourself feel better, that you have maybe picked up from today that you think, oh, I want to do that again, or I want to try that out. So really thinking about how you want to feel. And I've done my own circle of control here. So I've been kind of just put in a few things here that really help me. So my routine, how I start my day, really, really important. Meditation, journaling, exercise, all key component parts in that start of the day. Being aware of that inner dialogue that I have. Reducing the amount of time that I'm feeling negative or in that mood hoover space. Really being aware of how I impact other people. Taking that time to breathe and relax. Getting outside. I don't know about you, spend loads of time on screen. Anytime I've got a break, I'm like, I want fresh air, I want to get outside. And also the second one up there, asking for support. We're often not very good at asking for support. But I would really encourage you to reach out to people. If you're struggling, people tend to want to help you. So really asking each other for support as well, and bringing a bit of fun to it all. So I've got a little section on my website that's belly laughs, because I think we all need a bit more of a laugh at the moment as well. So again, just think about if there's anything in there that you can kind of take forward. What is your one thing? So thank you everyone for being engaged, for chatting away in the chat box, for giving me feedback on different things that we've done here today, and sharing your ideas and perspective. I'm always delighted to kind of speak to anyone. So if anybody has got any feedback, any questions, wants to discuss anything further, hop over to my website and just drop me a little line. There's loads of wellbeing resources on there completely for free, so check those out as well. So thank you everyone for your really kind comments there, and great to have you all along to the session. And yeah, just hopefully get the chance to work with you all in the future, or be on another one of these sessions with you in the future. Okay.
Thanks very much to you, Karen. That was a really, really good session, and you know the comments in the chat certainly back that up as well. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on to the Chamber event and delivering that for us. I think there's some really, really good kind of hints and tips there that people can take away. Personal wellbeing, such a critical topic just now. So yeah, thank you very much. I will be putting out just a little survey after the event just to get your feedback. I'll include those links that Karen has spoken about. And yep, that should be landing in your inbox shortly. The recording will also be up on YouTube within the next 24 hours as well. So feel free to share it with colleagues, send it around your teams, view back on it as well. And yeah, just, you know, like Karen says, if you have any questions for her, then just jump on the website and get in touch.
Thank you for helping set it all up, Sarah. I really, really appreciate it.
No worries.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye.